What if everything you thought you knew about Meghan Markle's rise, from Hollywood actress to Duchess of Sussex, was built on the fear that one man could bring it all crashing down? And what if that man wasn't a royal, wasn't a tabloid journalist, and wasn't a political puppet, but her ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, the one man who knew her before the spotlight, before the titles, before the carefully curated Netflix documentaries and Vogue interviews? He was there when she was still trying to claw her way into Hollywood, when rejection was routine, when reputation was fragile, and when secrets were currency. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Now imagine this. Doria Ragland, the woman who has stayed largely silent throughout Meghan's meteoric rise and her equally public controversies, has finally spoken. Not to bash, not to glorify, but to confess. A quiet warning, a subtle revelation, and a single sentence that changed everything. He knew too much. That's why she left him. Let that sink in for a moment. Not because they drifted apart, not because of irreconcilable differences, not even because of a new royal romance, but because Meghan feared what Trevor might reveal. This story isn't just about a failed marriage. It's about buried truths, Hollywood whispers, secret contracts, and one mother's desperate attempt to protect her daughter's legacy. But it begs the question, what secrets could be so explosive, so damaging, that Meghan would cut off the man who once supported her dreams, without warning? And what did Trevor know that made Meghan walk away, not just from a marriage, but from an entire chapter of her life? Let's rewind. Years before Prince Harry. Years before the tiaras and palace protocol. Meghan Markle was just another ambitious actress trying to find her place in a world that eats dreams for breakfast. She met Trevor Engelson when she was still navigating callbacks, casting agents, and trying to break through that ever-so-tightly sealed Hollywood gate. Trevor was a producer, well-connected, and according to insiders, madly in love with Meghan. He helped her. He coached her. He built her confidence. They were a team, until suddenly, they weren't. Now here's where things get interesting. Because the breakup wasn't slow. It wasn't mutual. It was brutal. Meghan ended it swiftly, some say coldly. Reports claim she mailed back the engagement ring. No explanation. No closure. Just silence. And in the years that followed, Meghan never mentioned Trevor. Not publicly. Not privately. As if he had never existed. But secrets don't die quietly. They fester. They wait. And when they finally surface, they explode. According to Doria, there was something Meghan feared deeply about Trevor. Something he had seen. Something he had documented, witnessed, held on to. We don't know. Not yet. But Doria did. She saw the storm coming. She tried to steer her daughter away. And now, years later, she's finally letting the public in on what she saw, what she warned about, and why she believes Meghan had no choice but to cut Trevor off entirely. And here's the part that should make all of us pause. Because Doria isn't your average royal commentator or Twitter theorist. She's the mother. The one person who has walked beside Meghan through it all. The press. The divorce. The palace. The escape. And for the most part, she said nothing. Until now. Her words weren't shouted in a televised interview. They weren't screamed in front of paparazzi cameras. No, they were whispered. Carefully. Intentionally. But they were enough to shake everything. Let me ask you something directly. What would make you completely erase someone from your past? Not just an ex, but someone who helped you build the life you dreamed of. Would it be betrayal, shame, or fear? Because that's the undercurrent in everything Doria has now hinted at. Fear, not of Trevor himself, but of what he possessed. Stories, memories, emails, tapes. We'll get there. Oh, we'll get there. But first, you need to understand the psychology of the Meghan-Trevor dynamic. This wasn't just a failed love story. It was a slow-motion train headed for disaster. Friends of Trevor say he adored Meghan, at first. They were inseparable. He pushed for her career, pitched her to people, even helped her land better agents. She appreciated it. At least, she seemed to. But something shifted. Some say it was Suits. That the fame changed her. That she outgrew Trevor. Others whisper it was darker. That Trevor had started making casual comments, jokes, about things Meghan would rather forget. About certain additions. Certain people. Even her family. And this is where Doria enters the scene with gravity. Sources close to the family suggest Doria once had a sit-down with Meghan, right before the marriage ended. It was emotional. It was private. But someone leaked fragments of what was said. Be careful, Doria reportedly warned. He's not stupid. He saw more than you think. Meghan was silent. That night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, she made a call to her attorney. And within 2 weeks, Trevor was out. No press release. No explanation. Just silence. Now let's fast forward. Meghan's royal romance begins. The media narrative shifts. Suddenly, she's the glamorous American actress captivating Britain's most eligible prince. A fairy tale. But Trevor? He disappears. There were murmurs. That he was gagged. That he signed something. That he was paid to walk away, quietly. And all that time, Doria watched. She saw the public embrace the royal romance. She saw Meghan transform into a global icon. But she also saw the quiet tremor in her daughter's voice whenever the name Trevor was mentioned. So why now? Why, after all this time, is Doria speaking? Some believe it's to clear her conscience. Others believe she's trying to get ahead of something. Something that might be coming. Maybe a leak. Maybe a documentary. Or maybe a book. Because here's the twist. Trevor Engelson has never sold his story. Not once. And doesn't that strike you as odd? In an age where everyone's cashing in, why didn't he? Was he loyal? Or was he waiting? And if he was waiting for what? That's what Doria may be most afraid of. Because in her own words, he knew too much. And what he knew, if it ever surfaced, could shatter everything Meghan has built. Think about it. We've heard stories about Meghan's family, her estranged siblings, her father. Doria has always been the silent one, the calm one. But when the silent start to speak, it's usually because the truth is no longer safe in silence. Doria didn't name names. She didn't go into specifics. But she said enough. She said the marriage ended for reasons deeper than anyone understood. She said Meghan didn't just leave Trevor. She escaped him because she was terrified of what he held over her. Now that's not just a divorce. That's a ticking time bomb. So I ask you this, before we dive deeper. What could possibly be so damaging, so personal, that Meghan Markle, the same woman who stood up to the British tabloid machine, to palace officials, to international scrutiny, would run in the opposite direction the moment Trevor reappeared? And why did Doria feel compelled to speak now? Is something coming? Because if Trevor breaks his silence, and all signs suggest that moment is getting closer, what will it mean for Meghan? For Harry? For the children? And for Doria herself? This isn't just another celebrity breakup tale. This is the beginning of a revelation. One rooted in old Hollywood, buried contracts, quiet threats, and one final question. What did Trevor know, and how far did Meghan go to make sure the world never found out? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What would you do to rewrite your past? Would you delete photos? Pay off former friends? Would you pretend an entire chapter of your life never existed? Or would you do what Meghan Markle did? Start over completely, scrubbing the slate clean, and cutting ties with anyone who remembered the truth? Because long before palaces and tiaras, long before the global headlines and royal controversies, Meghan was living a very different life. Not as a duchess, but as an actress scrambling for auditions, walking through the back doors of casting rooms, and hustling harder than most people ever realized. And that's the part of her story she never wanted you to hear. Back then, she wasn't sipping tea with the Queen or hosting garden parties. She was driving an old Ford Escape, memorizing scripts late at night in tiny apartments, juggling jobs, and, according to several insiders, making some choices that would later come back to haunt her. This is the Hollywood Meghan kept hidden. This is the version Trevor Engelson saw up close. And this is the past Doria warned her daughter might come roaring back if Trevor ever decided to speak. So what did Meghan hide? Let's rewind to the early 2000s. Meghan had just graduated from Northwestern University, double majoring in theater and international studies. She was smart, ambitious, and determined to make it in the industry. But Hollywood doesn't care about ambition. It chews people up, especially young women without big names or connections. And Meghan? She had neither. She started small. Background roles, one-liners, commercials, game show appearances. Yes. The infamous stint as a briefcase girl on Deal or No Deal. A moment she later described as feeling objectified. But at the time, it paid the bills. What most people don't know is how much rejection she faced. One casting director allegedly told her, You're too ethnic for the white roles and too white for the ethnic ones. Imagine hearing that over and over and still pushing forward. But Meghan did. She kept going, sharpening her image, studying the industry, figuring out how to play the game. And part of that game, building relationships, networking, getting in rooms where decisions were made. Here's where things get murky. Multiple sources from that era, people who worked in those studios, walked those hallways, shared those waiting rooms, have whispered about Meghan's presence in that world. Not scandalous, but strategic, always well-dressed, always smiling, always calculating. She knew how to charm a room, one former casting assistant said. But she also knew how to disappear the moment someone asked too many questions. And guess who was right beside her through much of that rise? Trevor Engelson, a producer who already had a foot in the door. Not a superstar, but respected. He knew how things worked. And Meghan? She leaned on that knowledge. At first, their connection was romantic. But quickly, it became symbiotic. Trevor believed in her talent. He helped her land better reps. He introduced her to writers, directors, studio execs. It's not uncommon in Hollywood, relationships that double as career ladders. But what happens when the person helping you climb also knows all the messy steps it took to get there? That's where the danger began. Because Trevor saw it all. He saw Meghan's frustrations, her breakdowns, the deals she made, the favors she called in, the roles she almost got, and why she didn't. He was there when she came home crying because a producer wanted something in return for a callback. He was there when she said, "One day, I'll be above all of this." And he was definitely there when she began crafting what would become her new identity, polished, regal, untouchable. But you can't be untouchable when someone else holds the blueprint of who you really were. That's what Doria feared. According to insiders close to Meghan's circle at the time, there was a growing tension between Trevor and Meghan. Not because of infidelity, not because of jealousy, but because Meghan began to change. She didn't want to be associated with old roles, old gigs, or even old friends. She allegedly stopped returning calls from former castmates, scrubbed her social media, distanced herself from people who remembered her early days. And when Trevor didn't fall in line, when he kept reminding her of who she used to be, she snapped. She wanted a clean break, one mutual friend said. She didn't just leave Trevor. She left that entire version of herself behind. But the problem with burying the past? It has a nasty way of crawling back up. Especially when the man you cut off was once your partner in everything, and still has the emails, the photos, the voicemails. Did Meghan know Trevor would never go public? Or did she fear that one day he might? Let's talk about the rumors. The ones Meghan's team never addressed. The ones that never made it to mainstream tabloids, but have been floating in industry circles for years. Rumors about a particular casting couch incident involving a well-known director. Rumors about an off-the-record relationship that helped her land an important audition. Rumors about a video, unflattering, personal, that Trevor once allegedly used to warn Meghan not to cross him. Now let's be clear. None of this is verified. None of this is confirmed. But here's the twist. Doria knew about all of it. She was there. She saw her daughter struggle, hustle, sacrifice. She saw Meghan fight for a better life, and she respected it. But Doria also saw the risks. And when Meghan began ascending into the stratosphere, into royal circles, Doria pulled her aside and said something chilling. You can leave the past behind. But if you leave the wrong people behind, they'll bring it back to find you. Those words hit differently now, don't they? Especially with what's coming. Because this chapter, this gritty, real, unfiltered chapter of Meghan's life, may not have been part of the fairy tale she sold to the world. But it was real. And Trevor? He remembers all of it. Here's a story no one talks about. During Meghan's final months on Suits, just before she met Harry, she reportedly had a strange encounter at a private industry event in LA. Trevor was there. They didn't speak. But she saw him. And according to an attendee, she turned pale, like she'd seen a ghost. Was it guilt? Fear? Something else? And days later, just days, she suddenly canceled a meeting with a biographer working on her unofficial memoir. Coincidence? Or panic? Now ask yourself this. Why has Trevor never said a word? Never done an interview? Never written a tell-all? Never so much as tweeted a cryptic remark? Because here's the bombshell. He doesn't have to. Doria thinks that silence is more dangerous than any headline. She believes he's waiting, holding, possibly even negotiating. And Meghan? She knows it too.